Welcome to The Pivot, stories of people who made a change. My name is Andrew Osenga, and my guest today is Matt Markins. Matt is the president and COO of Awana. If you haven't heard of Awana, then you and I had different childhoods. Awana is a giant organization for childhood discipleship. It doesn't work with one single kind of church. It works with like 1 million different churches and organizations all around the world, helping kids learn the Bible. It's sort of like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts for Bible memorization. That's terrible. That's not what it is. You'll hear what it is as we talk with Matt. I'm doing a terrible job describing what it is. Here's what I know. I was raised in Awana. The church that I grew up in, which you've heard me talk about this if you listen to the show, was a fundamentalist church in the middle of a cornfield in central Illinois. And I was taught a lot of really good things about the Bible and about Jesus, and I was taught some things that were wildly crazy. I was taught that Mikhail Gorbachev and Oprah Winfrey were two of the 7 seals of the judgment and Revelation, and we should be terrified of them. And when Gorbachev retired and Oprah retired, then it was like, well, then what does that mean? Is that true? It turned out I had to rethink everything that I had been taught about Revelation and then everything I'd been taught about all sorts of other things. It turns out there were a lot of things that I had been taught that were maybe not so rooted in Scripture, were rooted in politics or fear or even propaganda. But I learned a lot about the Bible. And most of that was from Awana, from learning these verses when I was a little kid, from when I was in 2nd grade and 5th grade. A lot of these verses that I just know in my heart are from learning this when I was a kid. A lot of the relationships that I formed with adults, healthy ones, good friendships, just people who were 20 years older than me, who I knew my name, cared about me. They were people who were Awana volunteers. This was before I was in Young Life or in college ministry, anything like that, when I was just a 3rd grader playing games in a circle, They were adults who were caring for kids, and that was transformative for me in ways that I'm still learning about, and Awana was the vehicle through which a lot of that happened. Matt leads that organization, and to get to now be friends with him and get to work with him a little bit and have this conversation with him is just astounding. So here's the story. About 1.5 years ago, I got this, I don't know, it was a phone call or an email or something saying that Awana, the organization, was having their executive leadership retreat in Nashville. They were all getting together, the president, the VPs, all the leaderships of all the different branches of the organization. And they were going to spend a few days in Nashville for their yearly retreat. And they wanted to have a singer-songwriter come and do a little house show so they could have a flavor of what Nashville is like and sing some songs and tell their story. And they asked me to come do it. And I don't know why. I don't know why they called me. I don't know how they got my number. It feels very random to me, out of all the artists in Nashville, why they would call me. I don't know why. And it was like 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I showed up at this Airbnb in East Nashville, and there were 30 Awana staff. And I just walked in with my guitar, and I played some songs. I brought my laptop with some photos that were me in like my little Awana uniform when I was a kid, holding awards I'd won for memorizing Romans 8. And I got to tell my story of how Awana had shaped me. And it was awesome. It was really, really cool. Get to start making friends with some of these people. There are some things that I'm working on in other aspects of my career that turns out might overlap with some of the things they're doing. So we've been able to have some continuing conversation, and that's been really fun. None of that was expected, and it's just led to me being able to be in continuing conversation with Matt. And so I'm so glad that we get to have this chat today. You are going to love getting to talk to Matt. The fact that he leads this organization is not a surprise when you get to hear from him. He is built for this. A good man. So I record these interviews a while usually before you hear them, and then I record these intros usually a week or two, sometimes before the episode airs. I'm recording this one just a couple days before you'll hear it. And we are now getting all these weather updates that we're about to get Snowmageddon. It's about to snow like crazy or ice like crazy, at least here in Nashville, but apparently all across America. So I hope that you've survived and it's been good. Hopefully you, got to binge your favorite show, took a nap, got to sleep in a little bit, threw some snowballs, built a snowman, played with your kids, whatever. Here's what's happening in another week. On February 3rd in Birmingham, Alabama, the organization that I lead, which is not as big as Awana, but I lead this organization called Anchor Hymns. It's a loose group of songwriters who care deeply about widening the vocabulary of the songs that the church gets to sing. We are making a new album, 2 albums actually, a live album and an acoustic album down in Birmingham, Alabama. We got invited to be a part of a grant that Samford University got from the Lilly organization. Drug money, Ozempic money. The Lilly organization that makes all these medicines, they have this huge endowment. They give literally $1 billion a year to different efforts of making the world a better place. And some of those things get to be these kind of ministry things. And one of them has been this project that we get to do with Samford. And so Anchor Hymns has partnered with Every Moment Holy, these books that my friend Douglas McKelvey has written. I interviewed Doug a few years ago. A lot of you probably have these books. They've sold over 600,000 copies now of Doug's books. That's insane. That's insane how many books that is. These books of prayers for all sorts of different moments in life. We've taken those prayers and written songs based around them so we can have the ideas and the themes of those prayers running through our heads with melody and song to be sung on Sunday morning, to be sung throughout the week in our families, in our homes, in our friendships, in our lives. And we're going to make a live record on the campus of Samford University and an acoustic record in another building there on the campus. Really excited. We're bringing songwriters from all around the country to the campus there. We're going to build a studio. It's insane. I am so tired. We are working so hard on this. So if you're a praying person, please pray for this. If you're a person who's been following Anchor Hymns or Every Moment Holy, I hope you're going to love this project. It will come out probably mid-summer. And I can't wait. The songs are amazing. Some of the best songs that we have done. And I think we've had some really great songs come out from our little community. So I just wanted to let you know about that. If you are near Birmingham and you'd like to come, it's a free event, the live record, the live recording, February 3rd at Samford University, Reed Chapel at 7 o'clock. You can just come and check it out, what it's like to be at a live recording. Would love to have you there, February 3rd, 7 p.m., Samford University. All right, there's my plug. But you didn't click on this to hear me talk about our live record. You clicked on this because you want to hear from Matt Markins, and you should, because he's incredible. So let's do that. Here's my conversation with Matt Markins. It looks like you have a great view up behind you, and I get to see it, but you don't.
Well, I'm glad you can see it.
Yeah. You are just a fantastic, wonderful human being, and I've got so many questions for you today. You lead one of the largest children's ministries in the world, and we're going to talk about that. But inevitably, that's going to bring up, just memories of when we were kids. And I'm so curious, did your childhood somehow put you on this path to what you're doing now?
100%. My earliest memory is the day that my dad walked out on our family. You probably
Kidding. Wow.
You probably seen that movie Inside Out about the core memories. That's a core memory. I'm sitting in my mind's eye. I'm sitting on the floor in my bedroom. For whatever reason, my mom and my dad left my bedroom door open, which is adjacent to the kind of the master bedroom suite. And my dad is carrying out cardboard boxes. He's carrying out clothes draped over his arms. But to my left is my older brother, 5 years older. I can still see him hovering over me. He's sticking the Disney Golden Books with the golden
Yeah,
spines.
yeah.
He's sticking them in front of my face. What's he trying to do? He's trying to distract me from the emotional violence, the yelling and screaming that my father was doing in that moment. Well, in the days, weeks, months after that, my mom finds her way to a local church. And I can still see in my mind's eye a bank of windows off to the left, and it's pink outside. So that tells me the sun is setting. So it's probably like a Sunday night or a Wednesday night. And there's a man with a guitar strumming Jesus songs. And I'm guessing 4 years old, and I still remember this moment with great crystal clarity. And I just remember something inside my heart is saying, "I want this. This is better. This is better than what I'm experiencing at home. It's better than my life." And that I would say that's the moment I took my first step of faith at a very young age and trusted Jesus as Savior. And not long after that, my mother marries my stepfather. I grew up in blue collar, central Indiana. You probably know this world, being neighbors
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Illinois. My home was surrounded by cornfields, sports culture, union culture. But my stepdad took us to church every single week. When the doors were open, we were there. So I grew up with flannel graph. I learned the Bible by all these things that happened in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And the church was just a home for me. My pastor, when I was a high schooler, said, "Hey, bring your Bible, come to the park, we'll get some ice cream." And he taught me the Bible. There were deacons who wrote me letters. There were youth pastor who said, "Come over to the house, hang out." My pastor's wife wrote me these little cards that were in the back of the Baptist pews, and where I thought my name was divorce, child support, and custody, she gave me the name of leadership, encouragement, and mercy, and she lifted my eyes to a future that I couldn't see. And I just knew as a junior in high school, I said, "Hey, what these people did for me, I feel called to do to others." That was as much articulation as I could give at age 17. And that's ultimately how I found my way to Nashville, to go to a small Bible college here in Nashville. And, God's just directed my steps.
Did you think you were going to do like kids ministry right away? Was that kind of always your plan?
As much as my 17-year-old person could
Sure,
articulate,
sure.
all the options that are available to you in 1993 are like, "Hey, I'm going to be a youth pastor,"
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's all
yeah.
So, I was on the hunt for a youth pastor's wife who could sing, right? So I'm at church on a Sunday night in the mid 90s, and I see this really beautiful, cute, adorable young lady singing a special back when we sang
Yeah,
specials on Sunday nights. Yeah.
yeah.
And I thought, boy, she would make a good
Clapping
youth.
while she's holding the mic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And in my very immature development, underdeveloped brain, I'm thinking she would make a fine youth pastor's wife. The things that young men who don't know what they're doing think, right? Well, we met, and Katie and I fell in love, and here we are.
Mm,
I don't know, 30 years later.
wow. So, did she become a youth pastor's wife?
Well, I never became a youth pastor,
Okay.
so it is interesting. Like I studied in college, I studied theology, missiology, and children's ministry, and I look at what I do now, which is the Venn diagram of those three spheres. But it was not a direct line, between there and here. But it is funny how God can direct your steps, sometimes in very crooked paths, but somehow He straightens it out.
Huh. So, tell me what happened then. Did you graduate from this college?
Yeah, I graduated from Welch College. Used to be just up the road from Vanderbilt. Now it's in Gallatin, Tennessee. Yeah, I graduated and kind of fell into the publishing world. I mean, obviously, you being who you are, you understand Nashville is a publishing town. I went on the print media side with Thomas Nelson Bible Publishers. I co-founded a thing called D6, which stands for Deuteronomy 6. It's like the parent, church and home working together to help parents disciple their kids. And so in that space with an organization called Randall House, not to be confused with Random House, but in that organization, I just kept running into the Awana people, because we founded this conference and it was successful. It grew really rapidly, based out of Dallas, Texas. And we were getting sponsors, all the normal organizations who would be involved in children's ministry were becoming sponsors of this thing that I co-founded. And Awana was one of those. And when we have pivots, right? Chapters that come to an end when I felt like I had taken D6 as far as I could take it. Literally picked up a phone and called somebody. You might know this name. He used to be a music guy. His name's David Bunker. David Bunker. Yeah. David worked for Awana at that time, kind of the
Yes.
last chapter of his career. And I knew David just from being in Nashville, and picked up the phone and called David and said, "Hey, if you think Awana could ever use me," and David, being who he is, got up from that call and went right to the president's desk and booked a meeting with me and the president. And the rest is history.
So how long have you been at Awana now?
13 years now.
13 years. And how long have you been the president, CEO?
I became president and COO
COO.
in 16, and then president CEO in 22.
Okay.
So I've been kind of leading, about 9 years now.
Wow. Okay. So I grew up in Awana, and
Mm.
I have an idea of it in my head of what it is. And then when
Sure.
I got connected with you and met your team a year and a half ago, you kind of blew my conceptions of what Awana is sort of out of the water. But for people who maybe have not even heard of it before, would you just tell us what is Awana general? What was it? What is it becoming now?
Yeah, Awana is a global leader in child discipleship. Churches use phrases like children's ministry. So if you're a church person, then Awana is a children's ministry. We can come alongside of your church to help you do, whether it's a midweek approach to reaching and discipling kids, or a weekend approach, or we have resources to help parents. But historically, how we were founded in 1950, and pretty much what we've been up until the last 5 years, is a ministry that's focused on midweek engagement with children, high levels of scripture memory, Bible teaching, Bible engagement. That's certainly a core part of who we are and always will be. But what happened is, about a decade ago, we started doing a little research around, like, hey, what made Awana, where Awana was successful, what made it successful? And that's when we really uncovered that Awana isn't just about scripture memory and helping kids engage the Bible on a midweek activity. That's when we really realized Awana has a reputation for discipling kids into lasting faith. So then we kind of kept digging deeper. We've now commissioned 14 research projects, including one with the Barna Group. And we really uncovered that Awana kind of stumbled into the three core ingredients of child discipleship. So once we were able to kind of put our finger on what those three primary factors are that form lasting faith in kids, we just said, you know what? What if we kind of took a half step back, and we're still going to be a scripture memory program organization, but what if we built a whole ecosystem around our midweek program based on those three primary factors known to disciple kids? And that's exactly what we've done. So we built a ministry that has not only midweek resources and programs for kids, but weekend, but also home-facing and leader-facing materials. So I guess you could say we have built a child discipleship ecosystem. Whether you're a pastor or a parent, anywhere around the world, we can help you disciple your kids.
Amazing. So I have so many questions about these 14 studies, but I want to know, you said you've identified these three core things. What are these three? What are these
Yeah.
three things?
I think every person and every organization is asking a question. And our core question as a ministry, a global organization, is, what is it the church does that tends to form lasting faith in kids? So, in other words, your church has an approach, whether it's a known or unknown or formal or informal approach at reaching kids with the gospel and discipling them. It just depends on how intentional or unintentional the church is. But we wanted to know, of all of those pursuits, efforts, and resources, which ones tend to contribute toward lasting faith in kids. And we discovered that there are three. We call them, in our brand language, we call them belong, believe, become. Belong is highly relational. Believe is truly scriptural. And become is experiential. So become is that relational element. The church is a communal body.
Yeah.
So we see kids, we want kids to go from being known to named, to loved, et
That's what
cetera.
you described, all
And
those people that took you out for ice
yes,
cream and that wrote you notes. I mean, that's, yeah.
it's in my story, and it's in so many, these are common universal objectives that could also be applied towards social science in other ways. It
Mm.
just so happens that biblically the Bible affirms these things from a gospel Jesus perspective. We see Jesus doing these same three factors in the way he approached humans and the way that he discipled. So that second element is scriptural. Like Jesus walking along the road, he's talking about the Old Testament scrolls. He's in the synagogue, he's teaching, he's on the side of a mountain, he's teaching, and he's referencing the Old Testament scrolls. So we're deeply scriptural. And the third element is experiential. And the experiential is multifaceted. Experiencing the presence of God, obviously, to a Christian it's critically important. But it's not only that; it's how do I experience life? How do I, if I'm a child and I'm being bullied, how am I navigating that? Who's helping me navigate that? So it's all three of these elements: the experiential element, the scriptural element, the relational element. All three in a child's life, and how we as adults approach them from a posture, from those kind of three factors, and our posture toward them in those three ways. Those factors tend to be the primary. If it's a tree, like the three branches of a tree that are going to form lasting faith, with the root system being in God himself.
So what led to you starting to do these research projects in the first place? Like, when did you decide, let's be a research, institution?
It's kind of twofold. One, the guy who onboarded me at Awana was a former Xerox executive. So, I don't know if all of our listeners even know what Xerox is, but a company, major company. He'd spent time in London and Tokyo and Chicago and Martha's Vineyard. He's very just incredible Christ follower. And he was on the executive team at Awana at that time, and he mentored me and brought me in with that as being my first charge to kind of look
Really?
back before we go forward. But it just so happened that I had a holy discontent of previous jobs and organizations where we weren't doing that with great diligence. And that was already a burning discontent that I had. So it was just kind of the marriage of Norm's involvement in onboard me at Awana with what I was already bringing in.
Yeah.
And so my very first contract that I signed as a new Awana executive was to do research with the company here in Nashville. And again, just trying to understand our roots. Where do we come from? What worked? What didn't work? And we just really continued to build on that. We're in the middle of a new project right now, actually, number 14.
Wow. What were some of the things that have surprised you in your research? Have there been some things that were unexpected?
Oh boy. Well, okay. There's this. This is kind of a long answer, but I'll do my best to keep it
Oh,
short.
no, I
But
love it.
there's this phrase that churches use when they're talking to parents about the spiritual development of the kids, and the phrase goes like this: "Parents, you are you are the primary person responsible for the spiritual development of your own kids." That phrase was popularized by a researcher and a man named George Barna. In 2003, he popularized that in a book called Transforming Children into Spiritual Champions. It's not as if that language didn't exist or those ideas. It's not as if seminaries probably hadn't been talking about this for decades. It's that he did research and wrote language and messaging where children's ministry community at large grabbed that language, and we started parroting parents are the primary spiritual developers of their own kids. So children's ministry, which is essentially a cottage industry of publishers and resource providers from beginning in 2003 till about, let's say, 2015. I mean, that became really the engine of children's ministry. Was we partner with parents, we equip parents, so on
Yeah.
and so forth. But me being in this space now for almost 25 years and having a lot of boots on the ground experience consulting with churches and being in the Christian publishing space, my intuition told me that, we say that as a local church, we're really good about the language of we partner with parents or we equip parents, but I wasn't convinced that we actually relationally equip a parent. So we did some research in 2022, and we discovered that we titled the project how do kids pastors spend their time? We just wanted to define the reality of, if it's true that parents are the primary, and if it's true that a pastor or a staff member's job is to be a shepherd of the saints, to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, then, okay, how are we equipping the parents to do that discipleship with their own kids? And we discovered that overwhelmingly, a kids pastor's time is overwhelmingly spent on administrative tasks. And one of the things that falls to the very bottom of their time allocation is relational engagement with parents. Now, when we ask them, what's the number one thing you wish you could do that you think would be the biggest contribution to discipling children, it was a complete reversal. Relationally equipping parents and volunteers went all the way to the top. So what's happening here? What's happening, for better or for worse, the church growth model, which has its ups and its downs, it's positives and negatives. The church growth model in most churches is so hardwired for around numerical growth. Hey, how do we get more people here? How can we increase our attendance? That it leaves very little margin left over in the kids pastor's schedule or calendar to even think about not just how can I personally get relational time with parents, but how can I even create a system or a program to make sure that parents are getting relational equipping. And then one more, to go one step deeper, when we ask them, what is the number one way you do equip a parent? It's to hand them a resource. And we know that those resources find their way to the floor of the minivan.
Oh man, I've got just bookshelves full of great advice, unread. Yes.
So in kind of what's the linchpin? It's parents need relational engagement, because they say, I don't disciple my kids because I'm too insecure. Why are you insecure? No one's ever shown me how.
So what do you do about that?
Well, we need to pivot. Yeah, what we need to do.
So I spend all my time talking to people about their personal pivots. How do you pivot as an organization? What is that like?
So we believe it or not, there was this URL that was sitting out in cyberspace, lonely, crying all by itself, called childdiscipleship.com, and no one owned it. And so we purchased childdiscipleship.com, now has a home. And what we've done and what we'll continue to do for decades ahead is to build an ecosystem of insight. What's insight? Insight's like when you understand something to the point where you go, oh, I get it. So the purpose of childdiscipleship.com is to help pastors and parents have insight to where they say, I get that I need to be discipling my kids. So on the church side, what has to happen is we have to change the way we manage our calendar. In other words, if I were to say to you, hey, Andrew, let's go have coffee next Tuesday, more than likely you're going to say, Matt, you're a nice guy, but my schedule's already booked, weeks in advance. But if I were to say to you, Andrew, I know this is absurd, but 6 months from now on a Tuesday, could we meet for coffee? More than likely, you're going to be able to find time because you've looked farther out onto your calendar, which is not completely populated with the immediate demands. So we're consulting with churches. If you are to the point where you get the insight, we have to become a more relational culture. Discipleship is relational. No matter how much we try to AI discipleship, human on human interaction and relational mentoring and consulting and coaching and all that. 6 months from now or 9 months or 12 months from now, if I start putting blocks of time way out in advance on my calendar, at that 30 to 60 day mark, I'm going to see that and I'm going to say, oh yeah, I put that there because I want to rewire my world to do something different, to create a different program, to have a different system set aside to have coffee and lunch and breakfast with people or whatever it is. But the only way, if you are to the point where you get the insight, we've got to rewire our system. If you don't control the calendar, the calendar will control you. So we start there. That's like buying up real estate, right? Like, I don't know if you've heard the story about how Walt Disney bought up all that real estate in Orlando. He did all that well in advance. You have to buy the real estate of your time well in advance on your calendar.
Hmm.
Then when you begin to approach it, you can say, oh yeah, I want to use my time differently. What is it that I need to build into that space?
I mean, that applies for anything. That
Yeah.
is great advice, just for anything that you wish you were doing that you can't find time to do.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you done that in other areas of your life, Matt?
Well, I mean, it's so funny. I just had lunch with a buddy that I've known since the 90s, one of those,
Yeah, yeah.
almost lifelong friends. And he just kind of laughed because, he lives a very local life. I live a genuinely global life.
Yeah.
I just got back from El Salvador. I'm in 6 countries this calendar year. So I can't live my life without planning well in advance. I can pretty much tell you what my week's going to look like for the next several months. So out of necessity, I have to live that way. But we're finding that this training that we're kind of mini workshopping right here, we're finding that this training is not only helpful for leaders, but it's helpful for parents, because a parent can say, oh yeah, we just kind of let Netflix and Instagram just kind of do it's, we live in the moment. But by thinking about our calendar differently, we're not only doing travel, soccer, or violin. We know we do have some other free time. What if we approach that time more intentionally as a parent, as a family? And so we're finding that's really even insightful for parents who get that insight. Aha, I've got to think differently about this. So, but thinking about it is one thing. You and I both know we're not supposed to eat too much sugar, but I'm sure there's times where we binge out a little bit on too much sugar. So it's not only a thinking problem, it's a system problem. So what we're trying to say is we've got the insight, we've got the research, we've got the training and equipping, but we've got to align our system to that insight and to that equipping.
Okay, well, you talked about your personal travel, 6 countries this year, but I know Awana is in, I don't know how many countries, but it's probably over 100, right?
It's 140 countries, yes.
140 countries. So what are some of the things that you have learned from spending time with kids or leaders in other parts of the world?
Something I can share now that I don't think I would have said 5 years ago is the cultural gap between us as global citizens is really narrowing.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I was giving a workshop last January, so whether it be January of January of 25, this calendar year, and we were talking about just the challenges with all things LGBTQ and like school curriculums, and what do we do about that? How do we navigate this new world that we've woken up in? And our friends in Kenya and our friends in Nepal, they're all nodding their head. They're all saying, yes, we're living in this same world. And Kenya is a fairly Christianized country. Actually, I know Zambia. Zambia is a fairly Christianized country, and our leader from Zambia said it's in our school curriculum and it's on the television. Zambia would not have said that just 5 years ago. So globally, with screen culture, with shared media, with social media, we're now, it's like we went from VHS to mobile screens like one step at a time. Africa just did like one giant leap, so
Wow.
they've all kind of caught up really quickly to where we're all, and when it comes to anxiety or depression or isolation or issues of sexuality, like we're all kind of at the same spot.
Wow.
Maybe not the exact same spot, but we're all at a similar spot. And I would not have said that 5 years ago.
Huh. So, well, that's an interesting question. So you probably have been doing research around sort of some of the anxiety and the screen issues that I know, like the Jonathan Haidt's book, and I've heard you reference that at the Child Discipleship Forum. Um, have some of your research projects looked into those kinds of issues? And is that a national issue? Is that a global issue?
Only in the sense that during the project we did with the Barna Group in 2022, we wanted to know during that project we fielded questions not only with church leaders but also parents and congregants. So kind of three different groups: parents who are also congregants, but congregants who are not parents of small children,
Got it.
and then church leaders. So we did hear from those parents and congregants kind of what these issues of the day were. And the insight there was that parents actually are asking for help on these, complex issues, with in terms of like, how do I help my child navigate today's world? Parents are asking for help at a slightly higher rate than church leaders are already moving into those spaces. So, and I think that's because it's hot in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
If the home is the kitchen, you're feeling these issues a little more. But as a church leader, you might be thinking, well, I know these issues are very real, but I don't know to what degree my congregation is ready for this. So the insight there was, parents are probably, more open to some of these things and getting help in how to navigate today's world than church leaders may be aware of.
Wow. Huh. Well, so what are some of the qualities that like kids today need most to navigate the world ahead?
I mean, Deuteronomy 6, which obviously an ancient biblical text, Moses says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And these words that I give you today are to be upon your hearts." And then he says, talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you get up. So I hear two things that jump out to me there. The first part is to be upon your heart. So kids need adults around them that have God on their heart, that have a heart for God, that are open to being redeemed and shaped by God and to orient our life around Jesus. So I'd say that's the first thing that kids need. The second thing, those two words in there, talk about these things when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, et cetera, et cetera. So when our oldest son was born and he's 3 days old, the nurse said the most, vile thing to us. She said, "It's time to go home now." And and Katie and I were like, you don't trust us to take this little human being home, right?
Like,
So
oh, but they're bringing us
yeah.
chicken tenders and taking care of us. Yeah, this is great.
So we get home, so in that moment, we're like really insecure. We're very doubtful. But 3 hours later, this happened. I'm standing in the kitchen window. I'm looking out, and my wife has baby Warren. He was born in August, so the weather's really good in Nashville. He's outside. She's doing something with pudgy little baby in the yard. And I walk up behind her and I hear her saying this. She says, "Hey, Warren, look at this. This is a leaf. Feel what this feels like. Do you feel that vein? Do you feel the texture of the leaf? And God brings the water up through the roots." And she's telling Warren how this tree works, and God made the tree, and God loves Warren. And I say to her, "You do know that he cannot understand you." And she said, "He can't understand me now, but if I talk to him as if he can, the days will turn into weeks, weeks will turn into months, and months will turn into years, and we'll have a language that will just flow between the two of us." That's how she taught me to parent. That's how she parented. And now my sons won't shut up. They're knocking on our door at 11 o'clock at night and they want to talk about stuff, right? So what do kids need? They need to be in a home, whether it's with a parent or a guardian or a grandparent. They need to be in a home that has dialogue. And dialogue is like tennis. During this interview, you're asking me questions and I'm responding, I'm hitting the ball back. So dialogue is two-way. I don't think Moses intended that talk to be lecture only. Lecture has its place, but a home that has talk is kind of like in the room that I'm in right now. If I were to bust open the drywall behind this electrical outlet, I would see conduit and the electric powers running from the power source to where I can access it here. That conduit is like the conduit, the relationship between my heart and Warren's heart. It's something is happening between the two of us in that conduit. And if talk is like that conduit, if there's dialogue that's going back and forth, in business terms, we use things like KPI, key performance indicator. Talk is the key KPI, the key performance indicator that discipleship is happening. If I can talk to my kids about ballet, if I can talk to my kids about the latest pop artists, if I can talk to my kids about what's happening in their school, and that's natural for me, then I have built the infrastructure. The conduit is in place for me to do discipleship. I might be insecure about that. I might not feel like I know how to do that, but at least the infrastructure is there. So what's the number one thing we need to be doing in our homes with our kids? It's dialogue. It's two-way conversation, because that's love can be expressed both ways. And then as a parent, as I get maybe more confidence or more equipped, or I just want to stumble my way forward, which is fine, I can also say, hey, Warren, when I yelled earlier, I yelled at you out of anger, and I'm so crushed about my behavior. What you did deserved correction or teaching or discipline, but what I did was out of anger, and that's wrong. Like, look, what's happening there? I'm demonstrating a part of the gospel. I'm demonstrating repentance, a language for where forgiveness can happen. But if I can't talk to my kids, then I can't even model pieces of the gospel for them, right? If I can't talk to them, then I can't say, hey, can I tell you about a verse of the Bible that popped out of the scriptures to me, or that I heard on a podcast recently? So I think that's the number one. It sounds so basic. It is basic, but it's our emotional hurts that keep it from happening. I think it's the number one things our kids need.
Wow, that's really beautiful. You referenced something. You said you could talk about the current pop artist. That makes me think about your new book. I heard you talk about your new book a few months ago, and you gave this great illustration that I've thought about a number of times. You talking about the smoking section of restaurants back when we were kids. I thought this was just an amazing illustration about, my parents did not smoke, so we would always go and sit in the non-smoking section. And of course, in Pizza Hut, we were still getting the smoke from the smoking section because how ridiculous was the smoking section? And that's what culture is today. Whether we're trying to protect our kids, what are we trying to protect our kids from? We're still getting it. And you've written a book about that. Would you tell us about this book and what caused you to write it? What's the idea behind it?
Yeah. You probably remember, maybe some of our listeners remember, in the 1970s, there was a bank robbery in Sweden where we get the term Stockholm Syndrome from. There were 5 hostages who were taken hostage in a bank, and over the course of 5 days, the hostages developed a relational affection for their captors. Like when you think of when you hear that, it's like, no, that didn't happen, but it really did. It really did happen, and it's a condition that they've coined Stockholm Syndrome. And Pastor Andrew at Redeemer. This idea came from him, by the way. In one of his sermons, this isn't an exact quote, but it's directionally what he said. He said, like Stockholm Syndrome, we are free to walk away, but yet we keep latched on to, he said something like that. And in that moment at Redeemer, I was like, that is my opening introduction to my keynote in September. But this idea this isn't just something crazy that happened to 5 Swedes, in the 1970s. This happens to us in everyday life. My mobile phone, I am free to walk away. I'm free to set it down. I'm free to walk it away. And John Mark Comer would be very disappointed in me that I don't walk away from it as much as I do. But that's an example of Stockholm Syndrome, right?
Yes.
Like, there's all kinds of things in life that are holding us captive. Now, in order for us to understand Stockholm Syndrome, it's believing, you have to believe a certain number of lies. Like the threat level to these 5 individuals was very real, but they lost sight of the threat level, and they allowed their hearts to be open for something else to come. And that something else is counterfeit. Those 2 men who were robbing that bank were not out for the good of those 5 people, right? They were not. And there are counterfeit narratives coming at our children. They're coming at you and me. They're not out for our own good, but we let these narratives sink into our story, into our minds, into our hearts. We believe them, and we develop attachments to other things. And so that idea, the idea of Stockholm syndrome, just really got me thinking about counterfeit versus real. Those two men were selling a counterfeit story to their five hostages, and the gospel is reality. The most real thing about us is that we are created, that Adam and Eve, through their own sin or rebellion, fell, that Jesus is the only Redeemer, not only to rescue from sin and death, but the only Redeemer to give us access back to life. And the fourth part of the gospel is restoration, that one day God's going to restore everything to perfection. But in the meantime, that's why he gave us a Sermon on the Mount, so we can live out restoration. Jesus said, broad is the path that leads to destruction, narrow is the path that leads to life. In other words, if you live in this way that I'm prescribing for you, it's going to be life-giving to your soul, to who you are. It's not going to be destructive to you. And so the gospel is reality. But going back to this kind of this smoking section, the smoke drifts our kids' direction no matter how hard. The smoke of the secular lies of this world, and even the cultural Christianity lies of this world. They drift to the direction of our children. And just like your parents and my parents couldn't protect us from that smoke, we're not going to be able to fully protect our kids from these counterfeit narratives. And so the reason I wrote the book was to hold side by side. I don't think we should fear the smoking section. I don't think we should fear. Because I think the incongruence of the secular narrative falling short, that these promises have been made to it. Let's stick with the mobile phone. This screen in 2007, we were promised this was going to liberate us. It was going to enlighten us. It was going to connect us. It was going to unite us and bring us together. That is not what's happened. That is not what's happened. So that is a counterfeit narrative. And it's not that these screens can't be used for good. They're used for good all the time. But to put my hope in that is to believe a counterfeit narrative. And so I think we need to hold these counterfeit narratives, whether it's naturalism or post-Christian culture, or we could just go on and on and on. We need to hold them side by side, age appropriately, with our kids, with the gospel, and ask them which one of these narratives resonates with your soul. The Bible, we would say, is God's ultimate authority, so we know what the Bible says. But engaging their minds, engaging their curiosity, what do you think about this narrative over here, and how do you think that compares with what we know to be true about reality? So those are a couple of frames. The smoking section and the Stockholm syndrome kind of helped us kind of frame up some of these thoughts.
It's really fascinating. Your idea too that culture is not bad, right? Culture in and of itself is just a thing, right? Culture is what this group of people does. I grew up in a world that sort of demonized the idea of culture by and large, but it's culture is just, here's a group of people and this is what's happening. And we love these people. We're a part of these people. And how do we engage thoughtfully with the world around us? And that's a whole different thing than trying to hide from.
Yes, I would affirm that. I would articulate.
I don't think I'm using the language like I want to either. Yeah.
I would say culture is norms, and those norms can be good, bad, and everything in between.
That's great.
And as a Christian, sometimes we are tempted to say good, bad, like culture bad, Christianity good. Like that's to make it extremely binary. Obviously, Christianity is good, but the danger is to say secular culture bad, and then point the finger back at our place and say, but there's no problems in our culture. Well, Christian culture has all kinds of problems. Why? Because there's sin inside of us. So to be honest,
and there can be beauty in secular culture. Yeah,
absolutely. So the gospel is honest and open. Like a reading of the Bible, all of the heroes of the faith were pretty jacked up people. It is because of grace. It's because of grace that we're saved. It's because of grace that God can change us sometimes in a moment, sometimes takes a lifetime. So we can talk open-handedly about we can articulate the negatives of secular culture and be confident about that while simultaneously critique ourselves, because the Holy Spirit needs to work on us and needs to work on the problems, whether it's our home culture or our church culture or Christianity culture at large. It's not as if it's just Christian, secular culture bad, everything Christian is good. We have cultural issues on all sides because we are all human.
Man, that's really thoughtful, and I love that nuance. Okay, so it's really easy to talk about the things that are bad and to point fingers in any
Yes.
direction,
Yeah. Easy targets.
right? Easy targets, and I fall to that often. What are you excited about? What are you hopeful about? You get to see all sorts of things around the world, and this new generation of kids, you get to see a lot of young leaders. What are you excited about?
I think there's an openness to the gospel. There's an openness to. So let's go a level higher than perhaps. I guess I should say less specific. There's an openness to spirituality.
Yeah.
In this cultural moment that we're in, that I wouldn't have said 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We've seen elements of secular culture crumble. What is it that Mark Sayers says? The secular vision of utopia is completely failing our young people. That's a quote from Pastor Mark Sayers in Red Church in Melbourne, Australia. He is a bit of he likes to analyze post-Christian culture and secular culture. And so a lot of these visions that have been sold to us, he says the canary in the coal mine is anxiety. Like, we're more anxiety ridden than we perhaps have been. And so, in other words, that's a sign to say, maybe these things we've been told that were going to make us feel more free have not really worked. And so in Europe and here in the United States and other parts of the Western world, as well as other areas around the world, we are seeing an openness to spirituality. I mean, you've seen the headlines, and Bible sales are up here, Bible sales are up in Great Britain, church attendance is up among Gen Z. So what's happening is there's an openness to spirituality, and that's a very good thing. Now, some people are going to find in that window, they're going to find Islam or Buddhism, or they're going to find Wicca or whatever it might be, because it's a spiritual window. But that's a chance for the church and for us as Christ's advocates to live out the gospel, to share the gospel, to invite people to open the Bible, invite people for coffee, invite people to church. And so, man, I am very hopeful about that. What it does for me personally, I used to, you and I are about the similar age. I used to think in the 90s, like, being a Christian was like being an alien. Like secular culture was so cool. I just wanted to have Guess jeans and Air Jordans and hope I could fit in and no one would really notice me. Like, if I could just have those things. And so, and as a result of the missional movement, what kind of became birthed out of this is, how can we make Christianity cool, right? Like, that was kind of the goal. If we could just be cool enough, then
maybe
our friends
this
would
Lord's
come to know.
Gym T-shirt will just totally
That's exactly right. But in that culture, being a Christian, it just felt like I was an alien. Today's world, in my opinion, my assessment, it seems like everything is alien. Like, everything is weird. It kind of reminds me of the Hunger Games. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Yeah.
When they go to the quote unquote go to the Capitol, and all the people have colorful hair and they're very eccentric. Like, we have become the Capitol. Like, everything is accentuated, everything is weird and bizarre and strange, and that's all become normalized and mainstreamed and all these kinds of things. So, in my assessment of this cultural moment, why would a man walking on water and rising from the dead, like, why would that be bizarre? Because we're open in this moment. We're open to anything.
Yeah.
So I think it's a real special moment in the Western world in particular for the gospel.
Yeah. Well, it feels too like 10, 15 years ago, in the music world, we were trying to, let's go play a club and be quietly Christian. We'll just be, try to be cool and hide the fact a little bit, and then we'll sneak it in our lyrics, and now I feel like there's this thing happening. It's like, hey, if you are a Christian, be your honest self, right? If you're a Buddhist, be your honest Buddhist. If you're a Christian, be an honest Christian. Like, don't hide who you are. And that ability, that if you're trans, be honest trans, whatever it is. Like the
Yeah.
culture wants you to be honest about who you are.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think there is a real beauty in that. And that's a
Yeah.
great opportunity for believers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So here's a question I've got for you. We've talked a lot about Matt at work, and you have a huge job. You lead this huge organization, and I imagine that takes a lot of your thought and your heart. But you're a dad, you're a husband, you have a life outside of this. What does it look like to be Matt not in the Awana headquarters?
Mm.
Do you fly fish? Do you crochet? Like what do you do?
Well, maybe I could start on an objective level before I get to the particulars. But what I am working on, I have a coach. I have someone who mentors me and coaches me, and which is both like psychological, emotional, but also spiritual, right? In my walk with Christ. I'm working on peace. I mean, peace exists, like Ephesians 2, like the wall of hostility has been taken down, right? Peace, because of the gospel, peace exists, but I don't always feel peace, and I mean, I have a pretty brutal travel schedule, and I've got a lot responsibility. So I am really working on just how to recognize the peace that I have because of Christ and because of his presence, and just how to access it more, and realize God's peace is with me at all times. It is right there. It's just as available as this table that this computer is sitting on. Peace is available to me because of Jesus. And so I'm really working on how to be cognizant of that, how to spiritually sit in God's presence and be connected to that, but also how to make sure that my life is wired to where I can set aside time to cultivate that even more. So my wife and I, because I travel when I'm home, we do a lot of stuff together. First of all, she's my best friend. She's the funniest person I know, and I really enjoy her. But we have been remodeling homes our entire marriage. We're on house number 6. So how do I just enjoy my free time? This may sound silly, but like we just love to do all things home, whether it's working in the garden or building bookshelves or tinkering around with a little project. That we do it together. We're good partners, and we just enjoy that lifestyle. Yeah.
You and I had a couple meetings, and one time we had a Zoom meeting, and you were in the car on the way to a Facebook Marketplace pickup
That's right.
to get some like coffee
We got
table
a
or
new coffee
something.
table. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, I gotta go. I'm pulling into some dude's yard. Yeah. Like, this is hilarious. Yeah. And with your wife, she was driving. You were,
She was driving, so I could Zoom. Yeah.
I was like, this is fantastic.
Mm.
Okay. So you're on house number 6. That's a lot.
By the way, I'm 49, and we're calling this the final home before the nursing home. So we think we're done
Sure.
after this one.
Until we
I meant to say until.
Yeah, until we find that. Yeah.
Ugh.
Amazing. That's pretty fun. Okay, so what's the next country you're off to? Where do you go next?
Let's see. Next country will be probably the one that I'm certain about is Egypt.
Okay.
But maybe I typically try to hit 2 per trip.
Okay.
But the one that I will very likely pair with that will be Greece. Can I tell you why?
Yes.
You're the first person outside of Awana to hear
I'm
this.
excited.
We have Awana Europe is growing. That's significant because historically Awana Europe has just been kind of growth of 1s and 2s here or there. But what happened is about a decade ago, a group of Norwegians got a hold of Awana and said, we want this in our country. They flew 26 people over to Chicago, where our headquarters was at that time. They got all the training. They opened up the legal Awana office in Norway. And there's been so much innovation happening there. They've gone from one Norwegian church 10 years ago to 225 now, Awana churches. That's in Europe, that's significant country growth.
Yeah.
They're now like the 3rd largest Awana country in Europe.
Wow.
And they started at 1, a decade ago. So Norway has become our hotbed for innovation, technology, as well as like curriculum, et cetera. And they have said, you know what, we believe we can take what we've learned here in Norway and we can scale it across all of Europe. And so it hit us recently that the gospel was first shared in Europe. I think this is correct. Our theologians can write angry emails if we're not. But the gospel was first shared in Europe, in Macedonia, specifically in Philippi. I think that's correct. So we are planning a low key, probably about 20 people going in under the radar, just going to spend a few days in prayer, that as we prepare to launch Awana on a more robust growth scale over the next decade in Europe, we just want to start with a few days of prayer. So we're gonna go to Philippi, which is not easy to get. I don't even think it's called that anymore. It's called something else. We're just gonna go there and pray for a few days, and then after that, I'll head to Egypt. Awana Egypt is a great ministry, but I've yet to put my eyes on it, so that'll be kind of cool.
It's amazing. What a cool opportunity you get to do stuff like that. I mean, that the ministry's happening,
Yeah.
but also that you can go experience stuff like that. That's incredible.
It's pinch me. I don't understand it.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to maybe finish on this topic. You mentioned right before we hopped on that you had recently made one other transition in your life, one other pivot in your church life. Is this something you'd want to talk about? But
Sure.
that you've been a part of a church for a long time, and that maybe that has been something that's changed, that's been pretty profound in your life. What's the story there?
Yeah. Probably the biggest pain of the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years, and mine and Katie's life, is leaving a church where we had been a part of for about 30 years, a combined 60 years between the two of us, maybe 65.
Lifetime.
My wife, yeah, she came there in the 80s. I came in the 90s. And that's where we grew up. Like we were young adults there, our upper teens into our 20s, and it's where we had our kids. These are the people who mentored us. But seasons change for all of us, and that season came to an end. But I can only speak from my perspective. But it was hard for us to wrap our mind around how that season could come to an end. We didn't necessarily want to leave. We just felt like we felt compelled, like this chapter needs to end. There's a new chapter ahead. But Andrew, we could not see, I could not come up with a way to think about what the next chapter could look like, because this is the only community in terms of, in my adult life, church community I've ever been a part of. How could we leave these people we love and this place this place that formed us? And it was probably 2 solid years of anger, grief, confusion, tears, and some of that is still there. Not as real, as it was then, not as experienced, I guess you could say.
Can I ask, was there like a thing that happened, or was this all internal? Just you guys got the sense that something needed to happen?
Pete, maybe the most informative thing I could say that
without throwing anybody under the bus,
that doesn't involve harming other people, would be Pete Scazzero has written a really good book called Emotionally Healthy Discipleship. And I highly recommend anyone who's like having like church questions, like, hey, I don't know if I understand what's happening in my church. I would highly recommend that you pick up Pete Scazzero's book, Emotionally Healthy Discipleship. He gets into this near the beginning. He gets into this, like, what are the 4 things that prevent discipleship from happening? And that part is in the first 25 pages of the book, so it'd be easy to look at. I highly recommend your readers, if you have a lot of questions about church stuff, go check that out. But reading that was like, it was the map of reality that I knew I was right in front of me. I could, like, these 4 things I just read is what I'm experiencing. It is real. And once you see
there's no escaping it.
There's no escaping that. You can't turn around and go another direction. And my wife and I just felt like we have to go into a new chapter. And the church that you're a part of, we were there for a year. And it was a very, we come from a Baptistic background. So to go from Baptist to ACNA, Anglican Church North America, which we loved our time there. It was almost like such a different experience. It just like it allowed us to completely get
Yeah.
out of everything that was normal to us. We love the liturgy. We love what is it, 3 or 4 scripture readings per service.
Yeah.
There's so much Bible. And the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, all of that was deeply healing and meaningful and formational for us. But ultimately, we landed at another church, Emmanuel Nashville, which is another fantastic church,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a blend of my two worlds now, my new world, but our past world, and we're not fully healed,
Sure.
but we are on a road to healing, and it's still hard for me to wrap my mind around. Some things just don't fully heal. Yeah. At least right now they haven't.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's a story that a lot of people find this podcast because they're on that exact journey, and it's a real thing. So
It is very real. Yeah.
yeah, but it's good to it's good to do the work of seeking something healthy. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And it's just a treat to get to talk with you. And I'm excited about your new book, The Story We Tell Our Children. We're going to put the links in all our notes and all that. If people would like to learn more about Awana, or they've got kids, they want to know how they can get involved, or they want to find some of these resources, you threw out a lot of great things here. How can people find what the stuff you're talking about?
Yep. 2 primary websites. The organizational website is awana.org, awana.org, and you can drill into our programs there. If you're looking for some of these child discipleship resources I mentioned, go to childdiscipleship.com. Again, it's not crying anymore. Someone owns it. It now has a home. childdiscipleship.com, and hopefully that'll be encouraging to you.
Amazing. Matt, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's the kind of person you want running an organization like that, isn't it? I'm so thankful for the work that he and his team, and that whole team is incredible. And that team represents tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of volunteers who are caring for kids and families all around the world. What a gift it was to just have Matt here. So thank you, Matt. Thank you guys for listening, for hanging out with us. If you want to stay in touch, you can find me at my Substack. You can check out my book, How to Remember, my vinyl record, all my albums. They're all those things you can find at my website, andrewosenga.com. And we will be back here next week with another great episode. I'm going to talk to somebody that you might not have heard of, somebody that I hadn't heard of until I found an article that he wrote that really moved me deeply. And I was like, I got to know this person. I really want to talk to this person. I was grateful that he agreed to chat with me, and it was a really wonderful conversation. I'm excited for you to hear this one next week. So that's a little preview. Please don't sleep on that. It's going to be great. Even if you're like, who is that guy? Click on it. Listen, you're going to love it. That's Fred Bonson is next week. It's always a gift we get to do this. So hope you are doing well, staying warm, and we'll be back next week. For now, go do something awesome.